Love it.
You're coming up to showtime. Ready for your counting?
Yes.
All right, have a great show. Going in. Give me 1 second. Sorry about
No problem.
You guys are pros at this.
All right. Have a great show starting in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ed Kless with my friend.
He froze.
He did freeze, didn't he? Well, welcome everybody to the Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Transformation Economy. I'm Ron Baker, along with my good friend and Threshold colleague Ed Kless. I hope he comes back on the line. He's at a remote location, so he might be having internet issues. And on today's show, folks, we have quite a treat. We have our interview with Doug Reuter, the inventor of the game board sequence, or the game sequence. Doug, welcome to the Soul of Enterprise.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the talk.
Well,
All right, and I'm back, guys.
And Ed's back. So okay,
I was
I'll
back.
toss it
Yeah.
back.
So
okay.
Yeah. No, I didn't see that I froze, but fantastic, Doug. We're so happy to have you here, and appreciate the pinch hit, Ron. Doug, board game inventor. That's a little unusual, and a very popular board game, Sequence, which I love playing and have played actually with you at a event we were able to, and that's where we met a couple of months ago. Take us through this incredible story of how you became a board game inventor.
Right. Well, to be honest, it's the last thing I ever thought I would really do. But one night, I woke up about 2:30 in the morning and had a dream about a board game. And so I got up, which is unlike me. Normally, I wake up from a dream, I just roll over. But I got up, found a piece of paper and pencil, wrote down everything I could remember from my dream. And in my dream, there were 100 squares on a board, 10 rows by 10 columns. And they had playing cards on each square. And they looked all mixed up. So the next morning, I thought, well, that was an interesting dream. And I didn't have anything on my schedule. So I got a piece of cardboard. I went up to the local gas station, bought a bottle of glue, believe it or not, and 2 decks of Tom Thumb playing cards. And I shuffled those cards for about a half an hour to make sure they were all mixed up. And then before I started gluing them, I got to thinking, wait a minute, there's 104 cards in 2 decks of cards, and there's only 100 squares. So my first problem, I decided to take all the red 2s out of the decks and just glue down all the rest of the cards. And then I chose to make the red 2s wild cards. So as soon as the glue dried, my wife and I started trying to play a game of, I first called it Sequence 5, because in my dream, there were 5 chips in a row on the board, up and down and diagonally. So I knew in my dream there had to be 5 in a row. So we started playing, and that very first game took absolutely forever because all the cards were mixed up in concert with my dream. But I instantly realized this isn't going to play well because it takes forever. So I had to come up with a method of organizing the cards on the board in such a way that they looked mixed up, but they really weren't. They had a pattern to them. And I'll take a little aside here. Years later, like in 2014, I think, I was at the Mall of America in Minnesota, and I was demonstrating sequence in a toy and game store. And this guy walked in, and he walked up and he said, "This is the greatest game ever invented." And I said, "Well, thank you. I know it's a popular game, but the best game, probably not." But he said, "The problem is you can't find your cards in your hand on the board fast enough." And I said, "Well, there's an order to the cards." And he said, "No, there's no order." And I showed him the order, and he looked at me and he said, "I'll be darned, I've been playing this game for about 5 years. I never noticed." So it kind of did my heart pretty, a good thing, because in my dream, they looked all mixed up. Anyway, so one of the things about inventing a game, you have to test it. Because trust me, if there's any flaw in the game, once you let it out of your control into the public will find the errors, either in the rules or in the game itself, the pieces, the layout. And so if you're going to set out to invent a game, you need to test everything. And after you test it, the problem comes in when you change one little thing. You have to test that game over and over and over to make sure that that thing that you change, whether it's a rule or the board or whatever, that it works. I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with the game Mastermind. It was one of my favorite games growing up. And if you make one wrong assumption in Mastermind, you can go 3, 4, or 5 turns before you realize you made a wrong assumption. And that's the reasoning behind you have to test everything. So in the testing, we found out that 84% of the winners of sequence 5, which I called it at first, happened when people used the red 2 wild cards. So I said to myself, well, that's not good. This is like Candyland. Whoever draws the root beer float wins the game. And so I had to do something to change that. I got the bright idea, and it goes back to poker nights in high school. After football games, we'd get together, a group of us, and play poker. And the old AC-deucey, one-eyed jacks are wild hands were played quite often. And I thought, in a normal deck of cards, half the jacks have only one eye, half the jacks have 2 eyes. So rather than making the one-eyed jacks wild, I went the opposite, and one-eyed jacks are allowed to remove a chip from the board, and 2-eyed jacks are wild, allowing you to put your chip on any open square. That left the 4 corners open, and I made them free. But I made them free only to the player or team of players that scored a sequence into that corner, one of the 3 ways coming out of the corner. and they would put a chip on that corner, and they owned that corner. So this whole process took almost 4 years, and finally I decided that it couldn't be improved on, and we moved from South Minneapolis out to a suburb of Minneapolis. And you know how you go through when you move and you throw things away? It had been 2 years since we had played Sequence 5, and I almost threw it in the garbage. Would have been a very sad mistake, as it turns out. So we moved it, and it sat in the closet until one day, or coming up on Memorial Day, and it was a good friend of ours invited us over for dinner and play some games after dinner. And he said, "Do you have any games that we haven't played maybe?" And I said, "Oh, I got one I know you haven't played." And my wife said, "You're not bringing that game." And I said, "Yes, we're going to bring that game." So after dinner, we started playing that game, and all of a sudden, we realized it was 2 a.m. We had played that game for 4 hours, and he asked me what it would cost to make 10 copies for him to give away as Christmas gifts. And so I said, that takes a lot of time, and why don't we see if we can find a company to print us some boards? So a neighbor of my father owned a printing company in a suburb of Minneapolis, and I went and talked to him, and I just wanted to make 100 copies, 10 for my friend and 90 for me to sell maybe. And he said, "You do not want to do that." This was in the day of color separations and 4-color print machines, presses. And so he said, "We're currently printing 100,000 decks of cards for a local game company. Why don't you let me see if they ever look at other inventions?" And so he called them, and they said they did. And we made an appointment for actually the next day, which was the anniversary of that was just 2 days ago, actually. And I showed up at their office, and I started trying to take the game out of the box I had made. And this vice president of new product acquisition said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I want to set it up and teach you how to play." And he said, "Well, you had better have covered that in the rules, because you can't stand in the aisle in Target and explain how to play this game." And I said, "Well, it's all in the rules." So I left kind of dejected, because I couldn't even share with him what I thought the positives of the game were. So the very next morning, I was in my office. I was human resource director for a manufacturing company, and my phone rang, and it was the CEO of the game company. And he said, "Well, I just called to tell you I hate your game." And none of your listeners know me, but I'm a reactionary. I kind of react when challenged. And but I caught myself, and I thought, this guy is the CEO of a game company, and overnight, he found a problem with my game that took me 4 years to invent. And I need to find out what that was. So are we coming up on a break here? I'm looking at the time.
Yeah. If you can just finish this part up, Doug, that'd be great. Yep. I know where this is going. So finish up the conversation with the CEO.
Okay. So he said, "No, you can't fix this." He said, "What happened was, after you left, we brought your game down to the conference room, and all the management got together, and we set it up and started playing it. All of a sudden, someone said, 3 cases of beer and 4 pizzas later, it was 2:00 in the morning, and all my management teams are walking zombies today." And he said, called to tell you I really like your game, and when can we have a meeting and talk about that? So that ultimately turned into a license, which is a whole nother story. And the rest is history. It took about 9 months for them to, they only changed two things. One, they changed sequence 5 to sequence, and he made the 4 corners free for everyone all game long instead of having to earn them. But if you play sequence with me, you play by my original rules. I call it my house, my rules. So that's
outstanding, Doug. This has been great. Yep, we really appreciate it. We're gonna get back with you and talk with you about. You have a very interesting and distinguished career. But when we come back from the break, I will do the read-in. I forgot to do that because of our technical issues. But right now, we have a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Okay. We'll just take a couple minutes break, Doug, and then I will get the countdown. Ron, what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll do the read-in and then throw it over to you.
Perfect. I should have done that, but
no, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, no, that's all right. I'm not quite sure what happened, so
this is
thought it was
politics.
me again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think we're ready. You ready, Doug? Ready to continue?
Yeah.
Yep. Jordan, let's go.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back on the Soul of Enterprise, and we are with Doug Reuter. Did not get a chance to do his read-in, so let me do it now. Doug is the inventive mind behind the beloved board game Sequence, as we just heard in the first segment. His fascinating journey of bringing Sequence to life process that spanned 4 years, as he mentioned, and 3 years to secure licensing, and hit another year before it hit the shelves in 1982. Beyond his success with Sequence, Doug had a political career, serving 2 terms in the Minnesota House of Representatives. His knack for strategy and rulemaking and game design translated into his legislative work, where he adeptly utilized procedural rules to navigate political challenges. Ron, over to you so you can ask about that time in the Minnesota House of Representatives.
Well, thanks, Ed, and thanks, Doug. I think I mispronounced your name. I'm sorry. Is it Doug Reuter? Is that the pronunciation?
Reuter.
Like Reuter.
Reuter.
Yep.
Okay. I think I said Reuter. Doug,
that's the correct pronunciation, but all the family pronounces it Reuter. But
Reuter.
if you lived on the coast, it would be Reuter.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better. I'm just curious, Doug, it was a great story about the dream and waking up at 2:30 and writing it all down. And I think you're working on some other games, and maybe we'll talk about that. But how do you balance complexity and accessibility when you're designing a board game like this? You talked about it a little, but can you go a little bit deeper on that?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Minnesota, so in the winter it's very, very cold up there. And I had 2 brothers, and we were only 4 years apart, and we played a lot of games. And I recalled when we were kids and playing games, we enjoyed games that were moderately complex, but had a conclusion fairly quickly. In other words, we did not enjoy playing Monopoly because it took 4, 5, 6 hours to finish a game, but we liked Clue and in the younger years, Sorry, and stuff like that. So I wanted to balance a fun game with a short period of time invested. So once you get to know Sequence and you play it a little bit, the average game only lasts 15 to 20 minutes. And,
oh, wow.
And as if you get much longer than that, people get bored with it.
Okay, fair enough. Just fascinating. Let us talk about your time in the Minnesota House of Representatives. One of the things that caught my eye was you were, working to reestablish the original session opening prayer, which you successfully did What motivated you to make that change?
Well, it's my Christian beliefs and quite honestly, belief in our Constitution. I mean, our Constitution says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging freedom of speech. So it was the first day of my second term, and someone made, so a little bit of history here. The very first day, the whole House gets together and they pass rules that are going to govern them for the next 2 years. And once it only takes, in Minnesota, it only takes 68 votes to pass that, because there's 134 members, so it's 50% plus one, to establish them. But to ever change them, it takes 90 votes to open up the rules again. Once they're opened back up, it only takes 68 to pass them again. So what they did on that very first day in 1999, they passed a rule which effectively had the effect of when a visiting chaplain came in to give the opening prayer, they literally could not pray in an opening prayer in Jesus' name. And you don't have to take my word for it. I've saved this paper. There's a St. Paul Legal Ledger, which was a little paper that a printing company did only during session. And the headline above the fold reads, "Politics and religion don't mix. Jesus Christ now persona non grata on the House floor." What they did was they abridged the freedom of speech of every single pastor that came into the chamber and gave the opening prayer. They could pray to God, Allah, Brahma, Buddha. We even had an Indian come in and smoke a peace pipe. They could pray to a rock, but they could not pray in Jesus' name. And so I used every rule. It was like inventing a game. I used every single rule in the rule book and all of our house rules to challenge that and render it moot. And I actually did that. But I also wanted to overturn that rule. So I started working one-on-one with different members, trying to get them to agree to reopen the rules to change it back. And I forced vote after vote after vote in the 1999 session. And then when we came back in 2000, I repeated my challenge and forced several more votes. Every time we voted, I got more people on my side. But now we're in an election year. And some members they knew their districts really well, and they did not want to have that on their record. So they wanted a yes vote on their record to change that rule back. So what happened was, stupidly, the Republicans who were in charge of the House for the first time, I think it's like 20 or 24 years in Minnesota back in 1999 and 2000, they literally put it in rule how much they could increase spending. Well, in that biennium. Well, that was the year that Jesse the Body Ventura got elected governor. So we had Republican-controlled House, we had Democrat-controlled Senate, and we had an independent in the governor's office. So now we had to satisfy 3 different monetary pet projects and whatever. We had to fund them. So all of a sudden one day, Representative Poleni, who was the Republican leader at the time and later a two-term governor in Minnesota, he was a friend of mine. And he came in my office and he said, we need to open the rules back up, and the Democrats have agreed to open the rules back up, but they're not going to put up one single vote to increase spending. So we have to do that. And I will quote what he said to me. He said, we've broken every arm and every leg, every finger of every member, and we still don't have 68 votes. And so he said, the speaker is willing to bring up the prayer rule and have a vote where it only needs 68 votes. And they knew I had 82 votes in the last vote count. But he said, you have to vote to spend more money. Well, at the time, I had the most fiscally conservative voting record of any member in the House going back 60 years. And I said, well, I'm not entering into any quid quo pro, but if you will bring up the prayer rule first, not allow any amendments to my language, I will give serious consideration to voting to increase spending. So that's what they did. And then Tim Poleni said, oh, one other thing, the speaker is not going to allow you to make the motion on the prayer rule. He said, I am going to do that. And I looked at him and I said, I don't care really who gets the credit. If this passes and becomes rule, everyone here will know who did that. And it won't be you. So what happened, and the board on the spending issue, the board was open for, I think, 40 or 45 minutes. And I finally did vote yes to increase spending. And so both problems got solved. But I changed the language back to the language that the very first session of the Minnesota House in 1857 adopted. And it has not been challenged since. So it's been 25 years now. The Senate tried to do something similar, and it got beat back. And so that probably, well, that and working with the most liberal Democrat in the Minnesota House at the time, she and I worked together to take down Jesse Ventura's #1 agenda item that he ran for governor on, and that was to turn Minnesota into a, like Nebraska, a unicameral legislature, no House, no Senate, just one body. And literally, Phyllis Kahn, who is a good friend of mine, actually, she and I took it down in committee, and we again took it down, led the battle to take it down on the House floor.
Wow. Doug, that's a fantastic legacy. And you were on strong ground, too. Doesn't the U.S. Congress open with a prayer?
Yes, they do. And they don't put any restrictions on it. And so I literally contacted a law firm that specializes in constitutional issues, and they looked at it and said, well, the problem is this isn't a law, this is a House rule. And so we can't change it or challenge it in court. And my response to them was, we are obstructing and limiting the freedom of every single pastor that comes in to say the opening prayer. Forget what we all agree to amongst ourselves. We cannot abridge his right to pray any prayer he wants. And but they just didn't feel like they could challenge that in court.
Excellent. Well, Doug, this is fantastic. This is flying by. I'm sure Ed's got more questions for you on the House of Representatives. But folks, in the meantime, if you want to get a hold of me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And you can check out our Patreon channel, which gives you access to bonus content. You can do that at patreon.com/TSOE. And now a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Great
we'll
stuff, Doug. Great story. Both stories.
Doug, I don't want you to be thrown off by it. Yeah, both stories. During the next segment, we'll talk about the mental health issues, but I'm going to go off camera, so don't be thrown by that. It's just to preserve the bandwidth, so that because my connection is a little bit shaky. But that's why I'm doing it.
My wife says that she can see me drinking water during breaks on the internet.
Yes, that's true, because that's streaming. So, yep. All right, Jordan, are you guys ready? Go back. Yep. All right, Jordan.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back on the Soul of Enterprise with Doug Reuter. And Doug, your stories have just been fantastic. I love talking with you. And of course, as mentioned, we had a chance to spend a couple of hours together at our first engagement. And I wanted to make sure that we covered this, because you view this, I think, as one of your most crowning achievements, and that is the work that you did to have a law passed in the state of Washington with regard to your son. If you wouldn't mind sharing that story with our audience, we really would appreciate it.
Right. So I want to say right up front that my wife, Nancy, participated just as much as I did, which was a real stretch for her. She's a very private person, and but boy, you don't want to upset the mother bear anyway. So the first thing I want to say about mental illness, it's very important. If you have a serious mental illness or know someone who does, I'm talking bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 or schizophrenia. People will argue, but it's real close to 50% of those people that have one of those or more of those diseases have an additional condition called anosognosia. It took me about 6 months to pronounce it, let alone spell it. But what it means is they have absolutely no insight into their illness. They do not believe that they have a mental illness. And so people like our son, who came down with bipolar mental illness in college in Arizona, and he and we helped him fight that for 9 years. Joel had bipolar and he had anosognosia. It was a major battle to keep him on his meds. And when he would go off his meds is when things got, and not only our son Joel, but anyone who has serious mental illness who goes off their meds just goes deeper and deeper into the illness. And that's when bad things happen. So in February of 2013, our son went off his meds again. He had been diagnosed with lymphoma. And by the way, there's a book, and it says, "Tell your children the truth about marijuana and mental illness." And it's available still. It's a thin little paperback book. It's still available on Amazon. And Joel's doctor in Arizona, after his first break, Nancy and I were invited to that meeting, and he told Joel he believes that someday there will be clinical proof that some people have the right chemical makeup in their body, the right DNA, whatever, that one marijuana cigarette will launch them into serious mental illness, and it can only be treated for the rest of their life, never cured. and he looked right at our son and said, "Don't ever smoke another marijuana cigarette." Well, with the chemo in 2013, he was upset stomach, whatever, and he started smoking marijuana again, went off his psych meds, and he spiraled out of control. And in Washington at the time, they had a law that was decades long, inculcated into the mental illness laws in Washington, and that is that only government had the right or the ability to go to a mental illness court and have someone put on a 72-hour hold. If a parent or a friend or whatever tried to challenge that government organization, their case was thrown out of court over and over and over again by the judge, because the law was literally written that they did not have legal standing, only the government did. So on July 5th, after spiraling out of control, the Seattle Police Department held an 8.5-hour long standoff with my son. He had somehow gotten a pistol, and on the morning of July 5th, the Seattle Police Department shot and killed our son. So, armed with 4 years of background in the legislative process, I reached out to some members and got some traction. And Nancy and I moved from our home in Texas out to Olympia, Washington. We were there every single day of the 2014 legislative session. We got one law passed in the House, and it undid that restriction for family members. It gave family members the legal right to appeal a no 72-hour hold order by the government agency. So it passed the House, went over to the Senate, and the Senate killed it on the last day of the session in 2014. And it was, to add insult to injury, it was my wife's birthday. So it was a very long ride back from Washington to Dallas. So we went back. Nancy lasted, I think, 10 days, 2 weeks in 2015. I stayed there the whole session. We actually got 4, if you want to call it 5, new laws passed in 2015. One of them was named Joel's Law after our son, and it literally undid, I'm told, 4 decades of inculcated legal binding, and it opened up the court. So if that government agency didn't want to put someone on a 72-hour hold, a family member could appeal to the court. And we were told a couple years ago by the head of Health and Human Services for the whole state. She called one day and said, I was one of those who was vehemently against what you were trying to do, but she said, I have come 180 degrees. And she said, I want you to know that over 1,000 people in the state of Washington have been helped by Joel's Law and the other laws that we got passed that never would have been helped if we hadn't done what we did. So the only way I knew how to tackle that was the 4 years of on-the-job training I got in Minnesota from 1997 to 2001. Little did I know that 14 years later, I would use everything I learned in those 4 years to bring about meaningful change.
And do you have any idea, Doug, how many other states are like Washington was? Are there organizations that you're aware of that are trying to rectify that?
There are. The best one that I know of is the Treatment Advocacy Center. I think it's tac.org. They're in the state of Virginia. Their sole purpose is to work with state governments to try and get laws passed. Here in Texas, we have a situation where we live in Denton County, which is a northern suburb, northern area of Dallas, and we don't even have a 72-hour hold even possible for people. The only way you can get held and treated for your mental illness in Denton County is to commit a crime, land in jail, and either a warden or a police officer, guard, says there's something off with this person, and they bring a psych doctor in, and that psych doctor, if they believe they should be hospitalized and treated, then that doctor goes to a mental illness court. But that's the only way, and every single county in Texas gets to make up their own rules. One of the things that we tried to get passed, not only in Washington, but I tried it in 2017 and 18, it's something called AOT, Assisted Outpatient Treatment. And what that is, after a 72-hour hold, if doctors in the court agree, someone literally goes in the hospital and they're medicated, and until they get them balanced and regulated on a regimen of medication, and then they let them out. Assisted outpatient treatment allows a judge to force that person to stay on their meds and go in regularly for a checkup to make sure they're still on those meds. At the time our son first contracted mental illness in Arizona, they had a 1-year-long AOT program where after they let Joel out of the hospital and he was balanced and regulated on his meds, he had to go to a doctor every single week for a year and prove that he was still on his meds. If he didn't show up, or if it was proved that he wasn't on his psych meds, they literally didn't have to go back to the court. They could just pick him up and put him back in the hospital, get him re-regulated and balanced. Some states have that, many do not. Every state is different. I wish there would be a federal law, and if someone could ever get me into Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I could tell him what it takes to turn the curve on mental illness in this country.
Yeah, such a difficult problem. And Doug, thank you so much for sharing that story with our audience. I know it must be challenging and difficult every time you do tell it, and I do really appreciate your willingness to share. We are up against our last break. However, I want to remind our listeners they can contact Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. The website is The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. But right now, a word from our sponsors, including our great sponsor, Woodard.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your cannon back in.
Okay. Sincerely, Doug, thank you. I know it's got to be hard, but it's a great message to get out.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
That was great. Wow.
My voice almost cracked there, but still,
Yeah.
after all these years,
I wasn't talking and my voice almost cracked. So.
Well, Doug, I'm in California, and while you guys gave the world Jesse Ventura, we gave you Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I'd like to apologize for that, but I'm going to jump off politics.
Okay,
in our last
I get you. Are you ready? We ready to come back?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, Jordan.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here with Doug Reuter, the inventor of the board game Sequence. And Doug, we have mostly a business audience, and I'm just curious, what lessons have you learned from your experiences as an inventor and I would say entrepreneur that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, the first thing is get a very, very capable lawyer. I have a lot of friends that I've developed friendships with over the years who are game inventors, and everyone pretty much tells the same story. You cannot have an ironclad agreement enough. It's not ironclad enough. Everyone I know and talk to has legal problems because once a company, and I'm not going to name names of companies, I'll probably get sued, but once you get a contract with a company, they pretty much feel like they own it rather than just licensed it. And I had a pretty sharp lawyer, but that's another whole story. It took 8 hours to negotiate my contract. But boy, unless you are a lawyer yourself, specializing in, licenses, the only thing I can say is get the best lawyer you can have. Yeah, it's going to cost you some money, but you'll save a lot of headaches down the road.
That's fantastic advice, especially when you're dealing with intellectual property. I have some experience with that, with publishing. They do kind of believe they own the book. The other thing I'm curious about, Doug, is you've worn many hats. I mean, you're a Vietnam vet, 6 years in the Navy, active duty and active reserve. Is that right?
Let me clarify. I never served in theater. I'm not like the governor of Minnesota, who I did serve during the Vietnam War, but I never served in theater.
Fair enough. But you served, and thank you for that.
I did.
You've also been a businessman and a legislator, an inventor. I know you've got experience in human resource. How have you managed to wear all these hats and have all these roles? How do you think about that?
I have probably the most supportive wife that anyone can have. She's put up with a lot over the years, allowing me to do this and do that. And I don't know. I don't know a good answer to that other than my wife was very supportive and let me, with respect to game world, I mean, I think some people that can see a picture, I've invented, 6 or 7 other games, 4 of which I've self-published. But yeah, you just take one thing at a time, and we had 3 kids along the way, and that takes a lot of time and effort too. And I don't know. I'm really glad that I did all I did in life, and I don't know any better answer than that to give you.
No, that's a good answer, actually. And what is the difference between publishing a game through a game company like you did with Sequence and publishing it yourself? What are some of the challenges and differences in those two scenarios?
Well, there's you really need a lawyer then, because there's copyright laws, and sometimes registering your name of your game, and then there might be something that you need to protect with a patent. And one of the games actually that I invented, I did apply for a patent through U.S. Patent Office and was issued a patent, a design patent for one of the pieces in one of my games. So this isn't something that you can do on your own. One of the most important questions I've been asked by people who have invented games but can't get it licensed by an established company and want to do it their own, I just tell them, look, you need to be prepared to get a second mortgage on your house, produce enough copies so that you can distribute them, and then you are running the risk that your whole garage is full of copies of your invention and no stores to buy them. I've seen it happen, and quite honestly, half of our garage is full of one of the games that I self-produced. Yeah, one of the games that I produced and self-published is called QB8, and QB8, I entered it in 2013 in a international scope inventors competition in a small town in southwestern Minnesota, and they had run that competition for 56 years, and my game, QB8, is the only game in their 56-year history to win Best in Show. That's when I decided to self-produce 1,500, and I've distributed about 1,100 copies now. But that's been since 2015, so 10 years.
Wow. Are any of your games available, like on Amazon or in any stores anywhere? The ones that you've self-published?
Yeah, they're not available on Amazon. There's no website for them. None of them have been sold in store. I guess you would just have to find out how to get a hold of me, and I don't know, because the store takes 50% of the price, and you don't want to price yourself out of the market with a toy or game. So,
Right, that makes sense. Are there any future games that you're working on, or other projects that you're excited about?
So there's a game that's sitting on my desk right over to my left that I started on 8 years ago, and I just hit a brick wall. And it's sitting over there, and every once in a while I look over there, and the pieces of that are staring me in the face, saying, okay, when are you going to finish me? But it's just dry. There's nothing I can do with that. So, but yeah, I had a dream about sequence. One of the things that's happened several times, 3 or 4 times, I come to a unsolvable problem, either in design or a rule, and I'll take a nap. And during my nap, I'll dream about the way to solve that. And it's worked out every single time. So I don't know. You probably have some head shrinkers out there that know what's wrong with me.
No, it sounds a lot like writer's block, or just staring at the blank screen, and yeah, sometimes a walk. Yep. Or just moving away from it for a period of time helps. Yep. Is there any collaboration that you do? Do you talk to other inventors about these issues, or is it just kind of solo work?
Yeah, inventors are a weird group. They, I've never collaborated with anyone, and you try and, there's these conventions that all these game inventors do. There's one, the best one is for inventors, is in Chicago, the weekend before or after Thanksgiving, I forget which, but a lot of inventors go to that, and you sit down, but everyone's careful about what they're saying because they know they're talking to another inventor. And they don't want to give up any of their processes or thoughts, and but we keep it general.
Right, and that's understandable. And Doug, I see sort of a renaissance with board games. I mean, there's various coffee houses that have board games, and you can go in there and play. Do you see that as well? Is it kind of making a comeback and moving us away from all this bits and bytes and digital gaming?
Yeah, in the last 2 years, board games have made a comeback. now with the tariff situation, the industry, I just read something the other day that game companies are moving away from board games and they're moving toward card games, which is kind of interesting because the last game I fully developed is a card game. And there are currently 2 international companies considering possibly licensing that game. And I sit on pins and needles every day waiting for an email or a phone call saying, we've tested this and we like it and let's talk. But
Excellent.
that hasn't happened yet.
Well, I hope it does. Well, Doug, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. And Ed, what do we have next week?
Ron, next week we are going to talk about our Threshold Treatise, which is our to-be-released manifesto, encyclical. I'm not quite sure how you can describe it. It's a treatise. So we're excited to talk about that.
Excellent. See you in 167 hours.
This has been the Soul of Enterprise, business in the transformation economy, sponsored by Woodard. Building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's noon Pacific. In the meantime, please feel free to visit us on the web at www.thesoulofenterprise.com.
All clear. Great show.
All right. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks,
Catch you next
Jordan.
week.
Hope you all have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. Doug,
Thanks
thank
a
you so
lot.
much. This was great.
Thank you,
I
Doug.
hope it went well.
It did.
It did.
It was great. Great stories. Great stories. So glad you took on
So-
Jesse, the body, Ventura, and won.
All right. It came alive. And I do apologize. Normally, Doug, we would have a little bit more banter, but I am actually on Long Island today. I'm speaking at my high school's first ever leadership conference. And very excited. Yeah, very excited about that. And I need to get back to an event, so I need to run.
Go.
But it was
Excellent.
great to talk to you again. And hopefully, maybe I'm. By the way, I'm in a production of Camelot that is going to be the last week in June, early July. So love for you to come see me if that's in the cards.
Did you hear about what happened with the crew of Little Women at the Plano Children's Theater?
No, what happened?
Almost all of them came down with COVID, including the director, Caitlin, and my wife came down with COVID, and my daughter, the mom of 2 of the actresses that were in Little Women, and they both have COVID, and Laura's ex-husband had COVID because he was at the play and took care of the 2 girls after the play. And so I understand maybe not 100% of the crew, but a lot of the crew of Little Women have COVID.
Well, let me just say that I am glad that I am in New York and not. I would have been at rehearsal in that very building.
Wow.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. I hope your listeners were entertained and whatever.
I'm sure they
Thank
were.
you. All right, take
Thank
care,
you,
Doug.
All right.
All right,
Have a good one.
bye. All right, we'll just do
All
this
right.
quickly. That was fun. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Very, very much so. Very much so. Wow.
Yeah, he is definitely an interesting guy. And like I said, I think I only asked 2 questions.
I think I did too. I mean, and I've never played Sequence, so didn't even know about it but now.
Hector is a big fan, by the way.
Yeah.
Hector
you said
Garcia,
that.
big fan of Sequence. So, yep.
Very cool.
It's fun. It's actually, I had not played it until I played it with him that night. I had heard of it, but we won it in a raffle where it was a night with him where he took us through it, and he actually also explained 7 to us, and I have a signed copy of the game 7. So I'm hoping that that gets released, and someday it'll be
Man, it'll be like the first Monopoly, before it.
Yeah. Yeah.
was published.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's up, Greg?
I'm sorry, I need to clarify that statement, Ed. You didn't win the game sequence in a raffle. You won an evening with Doug.
With the inventor.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that is cool. Okay.
Yeah.
That is
An
neat.
evening with Doug. Yeah.
That's how you
Well, because
met
as
him.
you mentioned,
Okay.
he mentioned his daughter and her and his grandchildren do theater at the same place where I've been doing the theater. So it was at a gala event his daughter came up with the idea of offering that as a prize.
That's
Very cool.
awesome.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
So-
And I know you've got to run, and I want to keep this as short as possible. There isn't a lot of information
Yeah.
out there about sequence, and I've been, as many of us have been, relying more and more, trying to incorporate ChatGPT into a lot of things that I do, right? I was speaking with Robert Wood earlier today about how I turn it on in the car now, and instead of listening to podcasts, I just kind of talk out loud and let it tell me things, right? Because there's not a lot of information out there about sequence, I went to ChatGPT and I was like, man, just like write some tweets for me about the board game sequence, please. And I gave it the Wikipedia page. It came back with 10 tweets. And now inside of ChatGPT, it will cite where it got its information. 3 of the 10 tweets about sequence came from a website called The Soul of Enterprise. So the preview message that we published for
Wow.
this interview is
Wow.
3 of the 10 tweets sources that ChatGPT referenced with the board game. So there really isn't a lot out there at all about Doug and the board game sequence.
No, I know,
Fascinating.
and it's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
I found
Yeah,
some
but-
stuff on the Minnesota legislative, websites about his House career.
Yep.
But yeah, not much on sequence.
I did find the Minnesota legislature's page on Doug and used that repeatedly during the political segment. It was really easy to take notes today because you did. I was going to bring it up if you didn't. You asked a total of 4 questions between the two of you. So, yeah.
Well, no. At the end, Ron asked a couple of questions. The last segment, there were more,
Tied with
there was
Rory.
more than
Tied
4,
with
but
Rory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Excellent.
yeah.
Ed, have you spoken yet? I
Good
thought you
stuff,
spoke
guys.
this morning.
All right.
Did you speak yet?
I did. I spoke this morning.
how'd it
There's
go?
another. I did. I spoke this morning.
And how'd
It
go?
went well. It went well.
Good.
Yeah. Good. I think I'm breaking up a little bit, but yes, it went really, really well.
Awesome.
In fact, I was sitting next to a guy from CBiz. He's the chief strategy officer at CBiz,
Right. Okay.
and he's going up to Toronto next week and is on a panel with Barry Melanson.
Yep. Who's selling some app or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
There you go. All right, guys.
right.
Good to
All
talk
right,
to
you
you.
guys.
Peace out, and back to sort of normal next week.
All right. Have a good weekend. And you too, Greg.